Hi, welcome to this time again this week, to Tending the Wild Garden, Growing in the Fruit of the Spirit. I'm Eugenia Gamble, the author, and I'm grateful to spend this time with you. The aspect of Spirit's fruit that we study this week, patience, is one of the most difficult that we will encounter in this study. Behind this ordinary sounding word, patience, lies a really life-changing concept that can get lost in our interpretations of that word. The Greek word that Paul chooses is not the ordinary word translated as patience in other places in the New Testament. That word refers to a kind of cheerful endurance. It's a kind of waiting in wonder for what God will yet do. Rather, here, Paul uses a wonderful, different word to speak of Spirit's patience. He chooses a word that we sometimes translate as long-suffering or forbearance. It is a daunting concept indeed. It literally means to live with a long temper. Spirit patience refers to that quality of self-restraint in the face of provocation or wrong, which does not hastily retaliate or promptly punish, even when one could, or even when it would seem justified to do so. Spirit patience refers to a kind of quiet, waiting, wisdom, and compassion, and that kind of quiet, waiting, wisdom, and compassion does not surrender in circumstances or succumb or throw in the towel during trial. Often we think of patience as somehow passive. Nothing could be farther from the heart of this aspect of Spirit fruit. Spirit patience is not passive at all. It is concentrated, controlled strength that is at the same time mild, compassionate, and constant in all circumstances. This kind of Spirit patience arises from a sort of otherworldly quality of well-being that Spirit plants in and awakens within human hearts. In this chapter, we look at a number of biblical passages to flesh that out. Of course, the life of Jesus in his 33 years demonstrates it. But we are not Jesus, and most of us find that living with a supernaturally long fuse is a challenge. We're often better at complaining or at lashing out at others for the random seeming unfairness of something than we are at sinking with confidence into the unshaking goodness of God. Spirit patience recognizes that God never causes hardship, but accompanies us in it and transforms us through it. In this chapter, I tell a story of an encounter years ago now with a woman I deeply loved and deeply admired named Margaret. Margaret embodied Spirit patience to me in a way that no other person ever has in my life. And I am just certain that the power of that quality in her can't possibly jump off the page for you as its presence did for me sitting on a bench in her garden on a fall afternoon nearly 4 decades ago. But I hope that you will linger with that story. Don't just learn the teachings in this chapter, although I think they are important, or else I would not have written them. But linger with the picture. In one ordinary life, of what spirit patience looks like and produces. Perhaps you have had your own Margaret stories that you can share with your group. I encourage you to write those stories down in a journal so that you can read the words. And as you read the words, let it all come back to you in your experience when you need it, in your body when you need it. I love the image in John's Gospel when Jesus tells his disciples about the gift of the Spirit as memory aid. The Spirit will cause you to remember. I love the Greek language of the Lord's Supper when we are called to remember anamnesis. It means to give something flesh again. So write out your stories about those experiences of spirit patience in your life or in the life of others and go back to them again and again and again. And I suspect that as you do that, as you bring something out of mere remembrance into the vitality of the present moment, you will begin to understand spirit patience a little better. These stories of when we encounter an aspect of the fruit of the Spirit in human life, any of the aspects are sacramental. They are often fleeting, yet they are physical manifestations of a grace too deep for words, a grace that can only be held for a moment in a story. Have you had moments like that personally? Moments when God's goodness infused even the worst of circumstances and both lifted you out of what was happening and allowed you to stay firmly planted in the truth of what was happening? If you have, then there it is right there. Ask yourself, who demonstrated that to you? Have there been moments when you wanted to lash out and yet somehow suddenly saw the fragility and the humanity of the one you wanted to reproach, and suddenly out of nowhere saw a glimpse of Christ struggling behind those eyes? Or more humbling still, saw that you yourself in different clothes do the same kind of things that you're wanting to lash out at. And so you held back from retaliating and judging and consigning others to, or the situation as awful and unredeemable. If you've had moments like that in your life or witnessed them and want to experience them for yourselves, you have seen a glimpse of spirit patience. It is growing in you. You may need to pull out some weeds or change the way you think, away from us, them, away from win, lose, in order to create space for spirit patience to ripen in you, but it is there. It always has been. It always will be. So this week, tell your stories. Don't shy away from the failures or the longing. You are just tilling the soil, and harvest is on the way. So see you next week.